All right, from reoccurring dreams to more dreams, we are going to the Cocteau Twins' Treasure. And in the opening montage, you heard Persephone, and now you're going to hear Amelia. All right. What are the numbers, Matt, on Cocteau Twins?
So the numbers on Treasure is this comes in at number 58 in the 1980s on Best Ever Albums, just one ahead of Zen Arcade. We've been doing that a lot, just they're back-to-back records here. Comes in at number 9 in 1984, number 428 of all time. It is Cocteau Twins' second highest rated album on Best Ever Albums, behind 1990's Heaven or Las Vegas, which we're going to cover next in the next decade. It's like the other two records we've covered tonight, it did not make Rolling Stone's list, and Cocteau Twins are ranked number 134 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums.
Pretty high.
Pretty high, yeah.
Okay. This album came out November 1st, 1984. Cocteau Twins as a band were active from 1979 to 1997. Spoiler alert, they're one of the few bands that have not reunited and have said that they will never reunite. So we'll see if that holds true. All three of the members from this album are still alive, so I guess anything's possible. But we'll see. Maybe once you hear some of their history, you can decide if they'll reunite or not. The most important thing about the Cocteau Twins are they are the band that pioneered the subgenre dream pop. Essentially, they are the founders of that. Notable dream pop acts include My Bloody Valentine, Mazzy Star, Julie Cruz, famously from David Lynch films and TV shows, and more recently, artists like Lana Del Rey, Sigur Rós, and Beach House are considered dream pop album acts, or have at least strong dream pop elements in them.
I think Lush is another band I think of that was like dream poppy.
I don't know if I would consider Sigur Rós dream pop.
Well, this is a Wikipedia list that I looked at, so who knows? I mean, I can see Lana Del Rey and Beach House more because I know them more. But Cocteau Twins are a Scottish band. They were formed in Grangemouth, Scotland in 1979 by Robin Guthrie, who's on vocals and drum machine on this album, and Will Heggie on the bass. And in 1981, Guthrie met Elizabeth Fraser while DJing at a disco, and she became the group's main vocalist, who you hear on this album. The band's influences at the time included The Birthday Party, Sex Pistols, Kate Bush, and Sushi and the Banshees. So all bands that we have covered.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
I'd say, yeah.
The band was named after the early Simple Minds song, The Cocteau Twins, which was later rewritten as No Cure. So I think that is the closest approximation that we have of a band that we've covered within the same few years, having another band be created from them.
We've had a couple of those though, that like a song spawned the name. I'm gonna have to think
I think in close proximity, right? Like this is
that close
within
yes, you're right.
Couple years, and that song is from their Simple Minds 1979 first album, Life in a Day, which we did not cover. The Cocteau Twins' debut LP was titled Garlands and released July 1982, and then later in 1982 they released the EP Lullabies and another EP in 83 called The Peppermint Pig. These first three albums were centered around rhythmic bass lines, minimalist guitar melodies, and Fraser's voice. And Will Heggie then left the band on friendly terms after a tour following Peppermint Pig, and this led to the sound that defined them on this album, and with Fraser's ethereal and operatic vocals and the effects-heavy guitar playing by Robin Guthrie. The band was signed to British record label 4AD, and the founder Ivo Watts Russell had a label collective project titled This Mortal Coil, where artists from the label would collaborate and, under this name and create songs and an album, which I think is an interesting idea. And
can I add something real quick, Josh, if you don't
yes.
mind?
Yep.
Radiohead was named after another band's song, weren't they? Wasn't it a Talking Heads song?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay,
Matt, do you know?
I think yes, they were named after a Talking Heads song. Yes.
I think we talked about that. So that's the one I was thinking.
It's not the name of a song. It's like a line in the song,
okay.
And the line actually came from Steven Tobolowsky, the actor.
Oh, Tobolowsky.
Tobolowsky. Yeah, I was hanging out with David Byrne and was talking about how he was receiving. He had a dream or something. That he was receiving messages, and he had like a tin foil hat or whatever, and like David Burns was thought of Radiohead or something from that story. So yeah.
But I just wanted to clean that stat because I remember we talked about that in one of the Talking Heads episodes. So sorry, Josh, to interrupt.
No problem. I always think of Stephen Tobolowsky from Groundhog Day.
Ned Ryerson.
In 1983, the Cocteau Twins were participating on This Mortal Coil and recorded a cover of a Tim Buckley song, Song to the Siren. And then while working on this, they met multi-instrumentalist Simon Raymond, who then joined the band and appears on this album. So he is the third member and remains a member of the band until they break up. With Raymond in the band in 1984, they released the 4-song EP, The Spangle Maker, and as well as this album, Treasure. So this is a band that this is a band that has a lot of EPs, and we haven't covered a band that really does that, but that's certainly a valid way of releasing music. Often EPs for the youth are 3 or 4 song albums. So they are I can't think of a band recently that's done an EP. Maybe the Yeah Yeahs, I remember, but that was like a decade ago at this point.
Alice in Chains had a fair amount of them in the 90s, so that was a long time back. But yeah.
So on Treasure, we have Guthrie on guitar, Fraser on vocals, and Raymond on bass. It was recorded in August through September of 1984 at Palladium Studios in Edinburgh, and Rooster, they just call it Rooster, I guess Rooster Studios in West London. The record label executive Ivo Watts-Russell originally tried to hire Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois to produce the album, so we got an Eno alert here. However, Eno felt the band did not need him, and Guthrie ended up producing the album himself. And so a rare instance where Eno did not get involved.
How do you think he decided that? Like
he said the band, you guys sounded like you don't need my help. That's what he basically said. So
that's a pretty good compliment.
Yeah.
Or he's just insulting them without them realizing it. One of the two.
Right. Despite being considered the band's best work by critics and fans, as well as one of their best-selling albums, Raymond has said that he alluded to Treasure being rushed and unfinished, while Guthrie has referred to it as, quote, an abortion and our worst album by a mile. And the period, which I don't understand this quote, but he said the period in which it was made as arty-farty pre-Raphaelite, which I don't understand art history enough to know what that means. But
all right, I'm going to look that up while you're there to see what pre-Raphaelite means.
That in itself sounds arty-farty, so
wow.
We'll find out. Robert Smith of The Cure calls this one of the most romantic records ever recorded, so he likes this album. Crucial to the Cocteau Twins, Fraser and Guthrie started a romantic relationship in 1980, so I buried the lead there, and they released more albums after this, and in 1988 they signed a deal with Capitol Records for distribution in the United States and released their 5th album, Bluebell Knoll, and the song Carolyn's Fingers became their biggest hit in the US, reaching number 2 on the Billboard Alt Songs chart. And then they released the album Heaven or Las Vegas in late 1990, which Matt mentioned, and was one of the most commercially successful albums of their career.
All right, I found pre-Raphaelite, if you want to hear it. I don't know when you want me to add this in.
Do it now.
Okay, it was a group of English painters, poets, and art critics founded in 1848. So there were 7 of them, and they were modeled in part on the Nazarene movement. Here are the 4 tenets, the 4 doctrines.
Okay.
Right? Number 1, to have genuine ideas to express. Number 2, to study nature attentively so as to know how to express them.
Okay.
3, to sympathize with what is direct and serious and heartfelt in previous art to the exclusion of what is conventional and self-parading and learned by rote. And number 4, most indispensable of all, to produce thoroughly good pictures and statues. And that was outlined by William Michael Rossetti, who is one of the 7 members of the Brotherhood of the Pre-Raphaelite. I don't know if that lets us know why this album was Pre-Raphaelite.
I know. I guess Ernest's desire to make
the only thing I can
music
think of is it was
something.
influenced by Romanticism, and I can see a little bit of the ideas of Romanticism and the sound. And I'm not going to go there, but there's some elements. I get that, but he used it pejoratively, right? So who the hell knows? Yeah.
So he didn't like it. Okay. Somewhat. I don't understand it still, but we'll see. In 1990, they parted ways with their 4AD record label due to problems with Ivo Watts-Russell, and the band itself was close to breaking up anyway due to, in part, to Guthrie's substance abuse. So we've got the romantic relationship and the substance abuse. And then in 1993, Fraser and Guthrie ended their 13-year relationship. In 97, the trio broke up for good, citing irreconcilable differences, in part related to the breakup. And then they really didn't do much, or they haven't done much. They haven't done anything as a band since 1997. Post-breakup in 2005, they announced they were going to play Coachella of that year, but then in March it was canceled where Fraser said she wouldn't be participating and could not bear to share the stage with Guthrie. And then in 2021 Spin interview, Raymond confirmed that the Cocteau Twins, quote, will never reform. So they are in the ether like this album. And Cocteau Twins, another band I knew by name but never listened to. So John, what did you think of Treasure?
I've got quite a bit of thoughts. I do want to share 2 things though, with different stuff. One is that probably the person most known for being inspired by the Pre-Raphaelites guys, J.R.R. Tolkien.
Oh, wow.
Was apparently a very big fan of the Pre-Raphaelites. So, which tracks a little bit with
nature. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and good work, and stuff like that. And the religious themes, right, which was a part of it. So that's there. 2 other, I actually found a list, believe it or not, of bands named after other bands. I looked at it. 2 other bands that we covered that I do remember us talking about this to some degree was the band Star Sailor was named. Do you remember who had a song called Star Sailor?
Oh, Tim Buckley.
Yes,
that was an album. That was an album. Star Sailor was the album.
It was,
I believe.
Yep, it was a song and the album. Both was on it. So yes,
which we did not cover that one. We covered
a
different one. Was that his Sex Funk period? The Star Sailor.
Maybe.
Remember Sex Funk? That's a throwback.
Episode. Way early.
2.
Episode
2
was it
2?
Yeah, God Almighty.
Yeah, it was.
That was there. Yeah, we talked about the Radiohead one. I definitely remember that. And oh my God, I bookmarked it and I just lost it, guys. The other one.
Oh,
so, shoot. That's I'll find it at some point. But yeah, there's a couple other. I know that interestingly enough, also Josh, one of your favorite bands, Spoon, is named after a Can song.
Right.
Spoon.
Okay.
I think that was what I was looking at. Yeah, we talked about that in the Can thing. That's Spoon.
That's right.
So that was the other one that was in there. So it has come up at times, but never as close, like you guys said.
Yep.
That's in there. Yeah, man. The word that clear. I mean, I can't imagine this band being described without the use of the word ethereal being used for them, right? I mean, it's basically they are the walking dictionary definition of ethereal. Yeah, I mean, this is. When I think of the sound dream pop, right? This is exactly what I think of. I don't think I realized that the Cocteau Twins are the origin of it. And because once again, this is what's so great about this podcast. I did not know the Cocteau Twins. They showed up on lists of bands that were in top 50 albums of the 80s, and you only have so much to listen to, right? And it just was, for whatever reason, I don't know if it was. And sometimes it's as silly as the name doesn't really connect with me in the way that Husker Du does or Sonic Youth does, right? It's just Cocteau Twins. I don't know. I remember for a long time, guys, there were bands I grew to like. But like the barrier when you're younger, you're dumb. You know, it's just like like Bell and Sebastian was another one. That
Yes.
I was like, I don't know if I want to listen to a band called Bell and Sebastian. You know what I mean, and stuff like that. And just
sad bastard music. Right?
I think they're also Scottish, aren't they? I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, yeah, but I'm just using that as an example of, I think that was a barrier because you're making, at some point there's so much music, you're just making choices on completely, benign things.
You're judging a book by its cover, John.
I am, and I will fully admit. So I did not know what I was getting into with Cocteau Twins. For me, they could just as much have been like a dance, like indie music or industrial, or I didn't know what I was getting with. But then as soon as I listened to it, I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is dream pop, like without a doubt. And, obviously when you're hearing dream pop, you're thinking, do we go like the way that like My Bloody Valentine goes, or does it go like Beach House, which obviously is the modern equivalent of this sound? Did it mention why all of the songs on this album are named after female names, Josh? I thought that was interesting.
They, yes, I looked this up, and they said that they just like the sound of it. There was no clear thematic reason or, concept to it. They just they thought it looked good, basically, to have all the songs.
I probably spent more time than I should have trying to figure out the soundscape.
Yeah.
At first I thought lyrics. I was like, I don't think lyrics are going to give it to me. So I was like, this is very much like as would be said, a vibe, right?
Yes.
So like I was trying to figure out
they
did
just
the
said
vibe line up with like Lorelei, and can I get anything about who? I mean, this is the English teacher, humanities brain in me, right? Can I get anything from like this sound that I can get an idea of who Lorelei might be as a sketch, right? And I kind of did a little bit, but obviously I was the only one putting in time for that because it sounds like it was just throwaway.
Yeah, they liked I think they said something about like the mythological.
Well, yes, all of the names are very, old school mythology type names. Yeah,
except the first track, which is named after the founder, Ivo Watts Russell. But
there you go. Yeah. So, but clearly, maybe that's the
definitely
pre-Raphaelite. You know what I mean? Like a little bit of the pretension there, and that's why it's kind of like, so maybe that's what he's going for. So maybe we dug into it a little bit there. But yeah, I like this music. Now, dream pop is an interesting one because oftentimes the songs blend together to me as an experience. So I always look at this week, two of the albums, this one and the Husker Du album, I think were very much what I call headphones albums. And I mean, the experience of listening to this album on headphones, as opposed to just putting it on in like a big room, the intimacy of the headphones part of it is, I don't know, did you guys happen to listen in different formats and get an experience that way, or was it largely?
Yes, I listened to it on Bluetooth speaker, which was not a good idea, and then I listened to it on headphones, which was better.
Did you find the same thing?
That
it was a very different experience?
Yes, it felt more immersive on headphones.
That's a great word for it, because that's what I felt like when I put it on in the headphones. It's sort of like it created a space for me, and so as a result, I'm normally, as we joke about the lyrics guy, but this album was all about the sound for me. And it washed over. My only complaint with any dream pop is, to some degree, it feels like a free jazz piece. Like I said, that there's no borders. It just is there, and there's ebbs and flows of a similar sonic palette, and it kind of all comes down to like, do I catch the vibe early and do I ride it out? And then the question, of course, comes, does it overstay its welcome? I think that's kind of like how I view it. And there's other genres like trip hop and stuff like that have similar things, but there's albums I love within these genres, and I like this album because I was there for the vibe. And this is another thing that this album plays better when you're in certain headspaces, as well as for me at certain times of the day. I found that the morning and the later evening plays of this particularly resonated with me. I think this is a very hard album to put on in the flow of your day, because it's basically designed to be a break or a coda to the day, or set the day to it. And so as a result, like one time I listened to this sort of in the middle of my day, in a break when I had to go back and do something, and it's sort of like you feel like you're intruding on it a little bit. So I kind of stopped the album at that point. I'm like, I don't think this is the time for me to, and that was still when I was not sure what I was getting with Cocteau Twins. I'm like, yeah, this is not a on lunch break album for me listening. This is, I'm going to have to be home, headphones in a different space. But with that being said, I liked it. it's a three piece, right? Because you have
Yes.
this ethereal guitar, and you have Fraser, right? Elizabeth Fraser, right? Is that the singer?
Yep.
Her voice is that classic style that I recognize as dream pop, but she's writing what the style is, and that voice I would say is sort of an escalating voice that's sort of weave is the wrong word, like almost like rides a wave in between sort of this layered, lush soundscape of the guitar, right? Underneath it, and so like it's almost like you feel like the voice is riding on the air at times, being elevated up high and then crashing back down, and then sometimes it evens out to meet the sound, and the guitar, I think especially the lead guitar is distorted,
Yep.
right, and has that what's the, and I apologize, I'm showing my ignorance, is it the box, that the echo box, right, is there, that's another piece of that, right? The distortion and that echo box sound, and it's like a layered, lush sound, and the bass sort of moors it together underneath. So that's like that dream pop. It's very much these three sounds, right? The voice weaving in and out, that echo boxy, distorted guitar, and then the bass line that sort of drives through it. So that's very much here, but it's cool when you're hearing it being created, right? Because you've seen how it is later. But yeah, I like this album. I don't want to over talk because there's more I can say, and I want to leave space for everybody else to jump in. But Matt, what'd you think?
So I probably in a lot of same line as you, John. I think this is a very appealing sound for me. First of all, I really like stuff like this. Very easy to listen to. I did listen to it both on headphones and without headphones. And I didn't. Honestly, I don't remember having I think I probably listened to this more without headphones, to be honest. I was trying to, because I knew I liked this. I knew, for me, I didn't feel like I needed to listen to this as intently as I did the other two records that we did. So when I put something on the headphones, I was more likely to put one of those other records. Because this I liked right away. This was a very easy listen. And I was struck by how this sounded. I didn't know that this sound existed in 1984. I wasn't aware of that. And in some ways, I feel like this is one of, if not the most modern sounding records that we've covered, because this sounded like so many artists that are around today. When I hear indie rock today, or thinking about it over the last 10 years or so, like it's very much gone in this direction of having a lot of like kind of echoey, type of sound, that kind of crisp production. And I was hearing a lot of bands in here. My initial thought was that her voice sounded like it was another Tanya Donnelly from Belly. It, kind of had a very similar sounding voice to her. But then the more I listened to it, I was like, man, this sounds like, definitely Beach House and Real Estate and bands like that, and Dive, these bands that kind of have this, that type of dream pop kind of sound. But also like this female bands like Warpaint and 254, which kind of, take this melancholy turn. They do a little bit more guitar work and whatnot. And I know that those aren't huge bands, but they're certainly kind of in the indie rock realm, and so I was just like, man, this sound is just so pervasive, or has been so pervasive in recent years. And the fact that this was like, wow, I had no idea that this was happening back then. So very impressed with that. It's a very easy listen, and I agree with you, John. This type of thing can overstay its welcome. I think that's one of my complaints with a band like a Beach House, that every album sounds the same. It's like there's like little variation. It all sounds good, but I also question like when it makes like, oh, this is the best record of the year, makes the top list. It's like, really? It's like they just did the same album that they did 3 times ago. So, so it does kind of, definitely walks like a delicate balance between something that I really like, particularly in the beginning when you first listen to it. It's like a fresher sound. And it does have a tendency the sound to overstay its welcome. But I will say, I felt like there was some variety here that was, with some of the instrumentation that changed up a bit. Otterly is a very different song than Lorelei, and I like the way that Domino ends, and there are some moments where it kind of crescendos a little bit and it builds off of what it's doing. It doesn't just stay as like a monotone kind of like same thing throughout the whole song or throughout the whole album. So I did find that this had enough variety to kind of keep me interested for the 40 minutes or whatever long it goes into, but yeah, just ahead of its time, and it's like the sound of the invention of a new subgenre, really,
Yeah.
which is cool, and it's cool to see it this early. When I think of 1984, I am thinking of Prince and Madonna and Springsteen and like these huge names that we've talked about, and then an album like this comes in, or like the Meat Puppets comes in, or the Husker Du, and you're just like, holy crap, these are all like way ahead of their time and innovative and unique, and it's the reasons why they are on these lists. I love the voice. It's just very soothing. I could listen to this and I see what you're saying, John, because this probably is a better record to listen to at night or in the morning or something like that. But I easily could put this on during the day. Like I had this on at work, and it's great background music. It's just great chill background music as well. But if you wanted to explore it a little bit more intently by putting it on at night and just listening to it, or putting it on in headphones, it rewards that type of listen as well. So, very easy for me to get into. If this is their worst album, or if this is like a pile of crap,
self-described, yeah,
self-described by the guy, that I'm excited to, because we cover them, a couple more times. So I'm excited to hear more from them. I hope it does branch out. I hope they are a little bit more, somewhat more varied than a band like a Beach House, because that's a great example of that, because that band kind of just everything blends in together for me. I like it fine, but I would like it more if they varied it, and I think that this has shown that there is some variety in there for me. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. This is a thumbs up for me.
Yeah, I hate to be a downer, but I did not respond to this album, and it kind of was frustrated by it the more I listened to it. I guess it's almost too ethereal for me. There wasn't a lot for me to grasp onto. I found it frustrating. While I liked Fraser's voice, I found it frustrating that I couldn't ever understand what she was saying, and the lyrics are kind of made up anyway, and they're more like noise than actual lyrics. I think it kind of, you guys mentioned, I think it did kind of wear on me. I think all the songs did start to blend together, even despite the short running time. I think the 3-piece is going to be a limiting factor for this type of sound, because I am skeptical, Matt, of what if the other albums can sound different from this. So that's another thing. It just kind of, in my mind, it became, the more I listened to it, it kind of became self-parody, almost like a perfume ad, or like Pure Moods or something. I feel like that's all kind of taken this sound and went with
hard.
it. Yeah, I know, especially in something like Otterly, which I thought she was singing in French, but I don't think she is singing anything, and that's kind of it just, for whatever reason, even though I don't pay attention to the lyrics always, I kind of need to know that they're actually saying something. Kind of a contradiction there. The guitar stuff I do appreciate, and I think that was interesting. I think kind of the guitar with her voice, there is an appeal there, but it's a limiting appeal for me. Maybe if there was another vocalist, I think it just kind of felt very repetitive to me. Yep. The structure, the sound, it's always, they're not deviating too much. But there were songs I did like. I picked Persephone because that is one of the stronger songs that I responded to, and same thing with Amelia. I think that's kind of a standout of her voice, her vocal work on that one. And it's just, I don't listen to too many of the other bands, or have heard too many of the other dream pop bands that we listen to. I have heard Beach House, and I'm kind of in agreement with you, Matt. I think once you hear one album, you've kind of heard all of them, from what I've heard. So this was just, I can appreciate that, they were, the founders of this subgenre, and something about all those Scottish bands that are, you know, they're out there doing their own thing and creating new stuff. You know, Simple Minds is also Scottish, right? Belle and Sebastian, I looked, they're from Glasgow, so they are also Scottish, and but I don't know. There was something here. Maybe it was the mood. I did listen to this at night. That didn't help. So the I don't know. This might not be the subgenre for me ultimately. We'll see what else. I've never listened to My Bloody Valentine. We'll see what happens when we get to them.
I don't.
They're different.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know My Bloody Valentine very well, but I have a very different feel for them. Like,
Okay.
or thought of like what they sound. That's more noise rock than this.
Oh,
That's
got it.
much more,
For sure.
you know.
Well, it's got the same
So it's like
layered, lush
nightmare
guitar, but it's the
Okay.
heavier sound.
like a
yeah.
noisier sound. Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Wow,
this
yeah,
goes
I-
off
I-
into trip hop too. You know what I mean? Trip hop
Yes,
takes this
yeah.
sound
Yeah.
and goes in a different direction too.
I also
but-
heard like guitar part, like this is like a little explosions in the sky, like, which is kind of, I wouldn't call them dream pop necessarily, but they definitely have that ethereal quality to them. And they're actually another band that to me, while I like, I think they kind of do blend that you know, sound does blend together. So I don't disagree with that, Josh, and I could definitely see this being a little laborious for some people. That's kind of like looking for, all right,
Yeah.
come on, pick it up a little bit or throw something else in there. But I don't know, to me it's just it's a pleasant sound, and I'm okay
Yeah.
with it, you know. Yeah.
What it sounds like to me is, it's funny. It sounds like this is kind of like sonically what like ska is for Matt, where there's just something about the sound
Yeah.
that just puts
Sure.
him at a distance. And it's interesting because I like the sound of both. You know, that this and ska that like has an effect. And I've told you that my harder one is industrial. Is my sound that's. I think it's harder for me, right, than others. To me, I don't think I found this quite as samey as you guys did. Like, yeah, there's some parts to it, but there's parts of rock music that sound samey to me too. It's just, I thought there was enough variation song to song that I definitely did not find myself getting bored with
No,
it.
I didn't find it.
I get what Josh is saying, because if this is not your sound, I could absolutely see how this would wear on you.
No,
for
I
sure.
actually, if I said that this was too samey, I was saying that there's similarities within the songs, but to me there is enough variety here to make it to put it beyond what it could have been, like one of those Beach House records. I keep going back to that, but no, I think that there is, you know, there's a little bit more upbeat things. There's times where they throw in like more of a bass line. There's times where it's like kind of like, you know, just its own like experimentation, just kind of taking you somewhere that's not even really like a song. It's just like a soundscape kind of a thing. So, you know, I do feel like it has that, but I see how, for someone that, if this isn't your thing or you're not really into it, how it can be samey in that regard.
One of the things that can't be overstated is how much she sort of creates the template of how to sing against this sound, to the point when it sounds like that's how you should sing against this. But it's
true.
not the most intuitive way to sing against this, because if you were to take her voice out, right, and listen to this, there's a heaviness to the sound here, not in like the way that we talked about with like the Meat Puppets, right, or Husker Du, or, you know, certainly like Nelia, but like there's a heaviness that like you have to rise above the sound. I think she even, I did a little research on this just out of curiosity, and I think she mentioned that like after a while it got exhausting to kind of try to sing over the wave, because that's how I I think of this sound. Like I used the cloud before, but it's also kind of like a wave, you know, and it's like when you're riding waves, right? You're jumping over some of them, you're diving under some of them, and like the voice is darting in and out, and like that's how she sings this a little bit. And you could have kind of taken that template and sang with it to make it like a more monotone drone type sound, or you could have done it like you know what I'm saying? And it's kind of like, it's interesting how she chose to do it, because people listened to this sound and said, I like this, and then kind of reinvented that sound and the way of singing over this type of music, to the point that we think it's a defining characteristic of this music. So
Yeah, it's not like, yeah, that's a good point. It's not, I guess it wouldn't be an intuitive way to sing to the music. So there's a little contrast there. And she definitely sounds good. It's just, whenever there's an album like this that I can't immediately after listening to it remember like a guitar part or like some sort of chorus or something, it's hard for me to like just it's too ethereal. It like it doesn't stay with me. It may be pleasant at the time, but that's like not enough for me to rise in my estimation.
Well, and it's also kind of, you know, juxtaposed against the backdrop of the other records that we've been covering, and there's nothing that we've really covered that sounded like this. You know, it's you know, it's the electronic nature of albums that we're getting now is much more, it's like synth pop kind of a thing, and there are synths in here, but it's a very different sounding, you know, like I said, I was shocked to hear this. I was like, wow, I didn't know that this was happening then. This is a much more modern sound, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you take sort of like the sound of The Cure, right, and that layered guitar, and you mix it with like early Kate Bush, because Kate Bush doesn't sing like early Kate Bush all the time, but that's a little of the vibe I felt she was going for with the vocals. And I do, for my end of things, I want to mention the first two songs, Persephone and Aloysius, you know, are the four songs that stand out to me. I really like what they're doing in those songs, and those are the ones I particularly kind of locked into the vibe. So if you can deal with the dream pop sound, right, those are places where I think it elevates the sound quite a bit.
I think Domino's a good Donimo.
Donimo.
Yeah, that's a really good ending. That's that is the longest song on here, and that's one that kind of, I like the way that one actually does build. I wouldn't say that a lot of these songs actually build, but that one kind of
does. Like splays out at the end to that like dun, 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 which is a different sound.
Yeah,
kind of like a down tempo. Yeah, so it stands out for, it's almost like it's winding down the feel. You know, like now we're going to prepare you to not be in this feel anymore.
Yeah,
you're descending from the. You're descending from the clouds now, coming out of it. Yeah,
a little bit more uplifting, but it's I like it. It's very good, and I could listen to this. This has got a lot of re-listenability for me, just because, not because it's great. It's a great backdrop for me, and it's a very pleasant listen.
But I think Josh's take is valid too. I think there's going to be people who hate this,
and I think I can see how there's probably some people that immediately respond to this type of music and are super into it right away, and like that's awesome. I'm just not one of those people.